Lesson 3, How to Learn a Song. There isn't going to be a whole lot of instruction in this particular lesson in this video because a lot of the information actually is written down in the text. One of the major components, though, as you're going through and you're learning how to learn a song is to try and do all of these different methods as you go through the process. Many of us are very familiar with one or two of the methods, and you may never have tried some of the other methods. If you're not used to reading music, this lesson is one of those situations where suddenly you're thrust upon the idea of, oh goodness, that whole thing about reading music. I've never had to do that before. I've never known how to do that. How do I do that? I've given you a link in the text to be able to kind of look at all the basics about how to learn it. It's essentially another technique to learn a song, which we're not going to go to in a lot of detail in this course. However, just knowing the basics of how to read the notes in the treble clef and the bass clef, as well as the basics on how to figure out how long those notes are supposed to be when you're looking at the music, are kind of important, especially if we're looking at a piece of sheet music as an example and you need to know what does it really look like. You can get away with not having that knowledge at the moment, but I would strongly suggest that you have at least a little bit of a basic working knowledge. Again, this is a basics of singing course, so we're not going to go into a lot of detail. One of the things I want to focus on in terms of the types of methods that are discussed in the text that we don't really maybe have as much familiarity with is, first of all, the idea of solfege, and second of all, the idea of being able to sing with a recording and how to use that. So solfege was a method that was invented by a man, Zoltán Kodály, who's Hungarian, and one of his situations was that he was trying to figure out a way for large groups of people to learn music easily, and so he created the solfege method. A lot of people are familiar with it when they watch the movie The Sound of Music. However, it did not come from The Sound of Music. It was just a familiar example. When we talk about solfege, and if you've seen it in terms of how people use it in elementary schools, they typically have hand signs associated with one, and I'm going to use those just as a demonstration so you kind of see the concept of where it goes. And the idea of using it is that it's a way to kind of know where the melody is going, that you can visually look at it or know the solfege, and it gives you a better idea of how to read the music more quickly. For example, if I were to sing a simple scale on solfege, it would sound like this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. The solfege signs for those are do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do is like home base. It's the most important note in the piece. So it's like where all the themes always come back to. So that's why it's got this symbol. Re has a tendency to go somewhere. So it's either going up or down. So if it's going up, it's going to mi, which is kind of a resting point. It's not as important as do, but it's there. Fa has a tendency to go somewhere. You can probably figure out which direction. Down to mi. So is another landing point that is halfway, basically halfway between the two do's, and the idea is that it's a point that's going to lead you there. La has a tendency also to go somewhere, but it's going down to so. Ti, I bet you can guess which direction this is going, up to do. So here's that scale again. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So if I were to sing a phrase, say for example, do, do, so, so, la, la, so, fa, fa, mi, mi, re, re, do. You can kind of visually see where the melody is going and which notes are more important using solfege. Again, it's a technique that has allowed people to not only use it in sheet music to read music, but also to learn how a melody works without having to read sheet music. The other method I'm going to talk about right now is the idea of recording yourself. Now, everybody kind of has a little bit of hesitancy whenever they go to this position, and of course, In this course, you're going to be recording yourself a number of times. You've already done it a couple of times, but the idea being is that you need to be able to be aware of what it is that you actually sound like and look like in order to be able to fix whatever vocal issues you have. Nobody really likes watching or listening to themselves, and there's reasons for that. And one of the reasons is because you actually sound different when you hear yourself in a recording than when you hear yourself singing without the recording. And that's because when you're listening to yourself singing without the recording, you hear yourself inside your head as well as the sound that's coming out and going to your ears and registering that way. That's one reason. Another reason is, of course, people just have a tendency to become more negative and critical about their singing, and so they're afraid they're going to see even more critical things. But again, the goal of this course is to get you from where you are to someplace farther along. So one of the problems with that is that we have to figure out what issues there are to be able to get there. So sorry, you have to kind of listen to yourself and watch yourself to be able to do that. The benefits of recording is the fact that you can actually sometimes hear and see things that you would not normally be able to pick up on because you're so focused on the act of singing. So say, for example, if I'm listening to the recording of this, I might notice that there are things that I'm doing with my body that are not things that I realized as I was singing. I'll give you an example of something like that. So let's say, for example, I'm singing along and I'm practicing and I'm not recording myself and I'm doing something like this as I sing. Sing, sing a song, sing out loud, sing out strong. Now, what was it that I was doing visually that might have caused some issues? Well, first of all, as I'm looking down, that's doing something visually, so it's actually causing some more tension in my throat. I'm doing this, which is not only causing tension in my throat because of the fact that there's extra movement going on, but it also might be distracting to the audience who's now just paying attention to your head moving versus listening to you sing. Secondly, at a certain point, I had shifted my weight off of one foot, which is causing, again, more tension in the body, and then my throat gets contorted. Now, I might not have paid any attention to that while I was practicing because I was focusing on the music and different elements to it, and so playing back the recording is very important. Even if you don't have a visual recording, if you're just listening to it, sometimes you can tell just by listening where the tension is going, and then you can practice the element again and figure out how to resolve that issue. So practice all these different types of techniques to the best of your ability. You'll notice that you probably will stick with one or two of them more than others. That's okay. But if you have more tools in your toolbox, that just makes you able to have more opportunities to sing later. I'll give one example of something that happens when a lot of singers that I experience who have never read music before, and they have a situation where they are like, well, why do I really need to know this? Well, let's say, for example, that you do make it in the music world and you become a professional singer and everybody loves you, and a company calls you and they wants you to be on their new movie recording. And they bring you down to the studio and they fly you in and they say, okay, great, here's the music. All right, take a look at it. All right, we're ready to record. And you're like, well, what do you mean? I haven't heard it before. Well, what does it sound like? There aren't any recordings. You're the first. And so having that ability will also get you more gigs in the long run because then you can read music and be able to sing it back in a quick manner. There are actually people out there, that's all they do. They are professional singers that can just simply go into a situation, take a look at the music, make recordings, and be on their merry way. So enjoy trying to figure out some different ways to learn a song, and I'll see you in the next lesson. The secret number for Lesson 3 is 2.5.